He's catching up with Boog. Boog and Craig, it's like a buddy cop movie. Fellas.
Cool, thanks very much, and welcome in everybody. How we doing? New manager of the Chicago Cubs, Craig Counsell. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I like the sound of it.
Yeah. What's this been like for you, this whole experience, Cubs convention, and all the people and all the fans?
Yeah, I mean, this is day two, and it's the same crowd out here. Like all the Cubs jerseys. Last night, when we walked on stage, like the energy in this room was amazing, and that was really cool to experience. Like I was nervous for that. You know, you're sitting back there, and you don't know what to expect, and you're nervous walking out here on stage like that. This isn't a baseball field,
sure.
You know what I mean? So, but it was really cool, and it's fun to be a part of. And like I told Brian Dempster last night, seeing like Cubs gear all around me makes me feel so much better. Yeah.
Tell me what it's been like the last month or two, getting acclimated, getting just a little more comfortable with the organization, and getting to meet more and more people.
Well, meeting the people is the best part, because like my job says manager, and that means I'm managing people. And so getting to meet the players really for the first time, most of them this weekend, has been a great part. I got to spend a good couple days with our coaching staff. We got some great work done to just kind of move the ball forward on spring training and on some season stuff. So it makes me feel way more comfortable for sure. Going into, like I just heard, 33 days to the first spring training game, which is starting to feel close, right?
Yeah.
Starting to feel close.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
As far as the process being hired, I sat up here with Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, and they took us inside your meeting, and basically Jed said that you talked to him about, if you're going to just hire me because tactics and strategy is the thing, you shouldn't do it. And then he said you kind of launched into about team building and about culture. Can you give me your perspective on that and how important that is to you and where that comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spend a lot of time, after we lose a game, figuring out like what move did we make that caused us to lose the game, right? And really, and that's important that we self-evaluate. But what's more important really is on a daily basis, how we treat each other, in the room, in the clubhouse, and because ultimately that leads to performance by the players. And ultimately my job is to put the players in the best position and to create a place for them where they can be their best selves. And how we do that is that's our culture, and that we determine that every day by kind of how we behave with each other. And you don't give a speech to make it happen. You live it every single day. That's how this works. There's no, they get to write a lot of books about coaches and leaders and things like that, but it's about how you do it every single day that makes this thing tick and makes this thing go. And that's what you set out to do.
I got a question I don't think I've ever asked you before. As a player, certainly when you started,
This is shocking, actually.
yeah, it is. But I've asked
me a lot
of questions over the years. 1997 is when we met. As a player, you were quiet. As you got older and had veteran status, certainly players came to you. How are you different as a manager/leader than you were as a player, personality-wise? Or are you?
I think probably, it's funny, I was talking to Ben Zobrist about this, and not exactly about that, but we were talking about how young players should be treated and how you talk to young players. And it's really interesting. I think Ian and Ben were just talking about that a little bit, actually. I've probably learned more about trying to put myself in the shoes of a young player and really understand what that player is going through. In fact, I talked to some prospects yesterday, and when we think about it, we all do this to these young men. There's 10 prospects here from the Cubs, and we glorify them immensely, right? right? And we tell them how great they are, and they're going to be the next superstar of the Cubs. And then they get here, and the major leagues is incredibly hard. And more often than not, they have a little failure to start this thing. And then we're like, he's not going to be the guy. But he is still going to be the guy. We have to help him be the guy still. That goes from me, that comes from you, right? And I think that's really important. And that's going to be a really important part of, I think, this generation of Cubs baseball. There are some very, very talented young players coming, and you will start to see them this year. Not all of them will come here and be great the first day they're here, but all of our jobs, right, is to support them and help them become that player, because at some point, these kids are so talented, they will become that generation that leads us to championships.
A guy that you and I know well, and these fans know well, Derek Lee. You think about progress. I mean, D-League in 2005 had one of the better offensive seasons in recent history. But progress and success isn't always necessarily going to be linear. He was a guy that was a first-round pick, and they said he's going to hit 40 home runs. And then with gap-to-gap power playing in Pro Player Stadium, yeah, there was some power, but there was a lot of strikeouts. And so there's always this assumption that if you hit 15 homers, and the next year it's got to be 20, and then the next year it's got to be 25, and the next year it's got to be 30. But sometimes there's a step forward and then a step back. Derek eventually turned into the elite level player everybody thought, but it didn't happen in this one linear way. And I think at times we kind of lose sight of that, and we forget that it's a process.
Yeah, I mean, Derek's a great example. He probably struck out 200 times as a rookie. And he walked, I remember that he was frustrated and he was down, and he just, the best thing that happened for him is that the manager frankly put him in the lineup the next day. And because he just, and that faith and that confidence, and he eventually figured it out, and the Cubs really got the benefit of that, and they got a great player. But there's countless examples of that. I mean, one of the great examples of that for Cubs fans is Greg Maddux. What Greg Maddux looked like is just think Greg Maddux, one of the best pitchers of all time. Look at his first year in the major leagues. I don't think any of you, if you look at that and you watched Cubs games and went to Cubs games that year, I don't know if you would have predicted it.
Yeah, the first season, he was a four-seam fastball guy with a curveball. And I still remember, I said, your first year, were you overmatched? And he said to me, no, I was overscared. It's a pretty good line.
That's a great line.
I mean, that's just real, though. You know what I'm saying? That it was scary for him. We got to remember that sometimes that's going to take place. All right, so in terms of the work that you do interpersonally, these type of situations are good for you. What have you been reading up on, studying up on, learning about this organization? I mean, just a broad question, but the things that you're trying to learn. Because one of the things, I'm sure, you were in Milwaukee for such a long time, you know the organization inside it. There's so many things that you don't even need to look, into your system. You know about the prospects. You know how certain players are valued. And, I mean, this is a new process, having to learn all that stuff.
Yeah, that part's, when you're in one place for a long time, you take that for granted a little bit. And so the new part is, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's exciting, sometimes you need it. But like with players, I think the best thing, the conversation in my head has been, like, how much do I want to know about the players, and how much do I just want to see for the first time when I get to Mesa and watch them play and not make any judgments, and just really see them with my own eyes and not be biased about anything. Like, I think one of my jobs always is to not to listen to everybody, but not get too swayed by any one thing, and that's how I think you make good decisions, is take in a lot of information, don't let any of those inputs kind of get too powerful, and then you make really good decisions. So, like, I can't wait to see Hayden Wesneski throw a baseball. I've always been kind of been interested in him, and he's always excited me. But I almost don't want to hear about last year because of that.
Yeah, you want to experience it for yourself and not try and let all that other stuff be the noise in terms of you deciding. That makes some sense. As far as this upcoming season, and you look at the National League Central, what's your perspective on where the Cubs fit? Obviously, there's plenty of room for more roster additions, but Cardinals, Reds, Brewers, where do the Cubs fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw Jed made a comment last night that the offseason's in the 4th or 5th inning. I thought that was interesting, and I was like, that's good news, actually. But he's right. I mean, he's right. There's not a game until April 1st, right? That counts on the record. So there is a lot of time in this thing. The divisions are always there's you can clearly see there's 4 teams that are really in it, and then Pittsburgh's got so many young players that and this is kind of what we were just talking about, when you have a lot of young players, even Cincinnati got incredible contributions from their young players last year that made them an exciting team. Pittsburgh could get those contributions and then be a really exciting team. So that's where a lot of the teams are. St. Louis has really kind of rebuilt their team, added a ton of pitching, which is going to make them formidable. They have some stalwarts in the middle of their lineup that always make that are scary people to face, and you plan around and don't look forward to facing. So right now, how I see the division, really wide open. I don't know if you could I think there's going to be a lot of, by the time we get to the end of the off season, I really think there's going to be a lot of teams can win this division, and that's good. That's fun, and that's a challenge for us, and that's how we should see it.
Let's talk about you for 1 second in terms of your career. You played a long time. You played all over the infield. Later in your career, you were a veteran type
Bad player.
Well, I wasn't talking about your last year. What was the offer that you had your last year?
I was.
Is it the record?
I try to forget. It was 0 for 44.
Wow.
Yeah. I really would have needed your support at that point.
Yeah. Mine or theirs?
Everyone's.
Yes. 0 for 44. Ow. That's hurtful. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was over. The funny thing, it was over. I didn't play that much, which was a smart move by the manager.
Yeah.
But it was over 2 months.
Oh.
So I literally didn't get a hit for 2 months, and that was tough to swallow a little bit. It's not easy going home every night from the ballpark and another night without a hit for you.
Oh boy. That'll give you a little bit of empathy, though, for guys that are going through it, right?
Yeah, no, it does, man. I look at 0 for 20, I'm like, you're only 0 for 20.
You're fine. But your role as a player, you were, you and I joked about this, you were underdog guy. And now you go from playing your career and managing in a small market in Milwaukee. They plunked down a lot of money to hire you as, certainly one of the best managers in the game. Do you process that at all, that there's a little bit of, you're putting yourself in a spot where it's all right, let's go, let's do this. As opposed to, well, let's see if you can make the most of it. You know what I'm saying? Do you experience it that way, that there's pressure on you?
Yeah, I really don't. Because I experience it I think I probably worried about that when I first started managing. It's do I have to do something different? Do I have to act differently as the manager? Am I supposed to be a certain way? Am I supposed to get mad here and yell at the umpire? Am I supposed to have big team meetings where I go rah rah? What am I supposed to do, right? And I've learned, you have to just do it your way. It has to be comfortable to you. you have to make yourself uncomfortable with some of the things you do, because that's good for your team and it's good for yourself, but you can't change. And so like the kind of underdog thing, like I'd love to get rid of that, but it'll never get me out of me. It's just who that I like.
Yeah, it's who you ID with.
Yeah, it's who I ID with. So I can't help it, right? And like in my own way, that'll become part of this team, right? Because it's just how I've always processed it. And it's how my life in like professional baseball has been for the last 35 years. So that's just how it is. And then you just got to do it your way. I know all the, I'm quite aware of what has happened and this position that I'm in. Grateful for it, but almost like makes me feel like nobody thinks I can do it now. Like that's how I process it. You don't think I can do this? Yeah. Like you don't think I can do it? Watch.
Questions, you can start lining up the microphones. We'll get to those shortly here with the new manager of the Cubs, Counsell. As far as this team is concerned, Imago was just signed. The press conference yesterday showed off some personality, showed off some courage, man. Getting a chance to show everybody, go Cubs go, and the English, and we'll get to the pitching in a second. What was your impression there?
I mean, I was blown away. I was sitting in the front row and watching this, and I can't imagine. You put yourself in his shoes and trying to read that and learn that.
Japanese.
If I was doing it in Japanese,
right,
I would be terrified. I would have been terrified. And he did it with like such lightness and humor that I was just really impressed. And I told him that afterwards because I thought it was unbelievable.
Fly ball pitcher, gets a lot of strikeouts, and even though he's not particularly big, his fastball plays. Give me just an idea of what you've been told about him and what you know about him.
Yeah, so like it's funny. That's kind of like what's been said. The thing that I see is like skilled pitcher, and so when I see skilled pitcher and skilled thinker on the mound, so like adjustments are going to be fairly easy for him. Like he will make adjustments and he will see adjustments that he wants to make very quickly. And that's what I was excited about, because I think he kind of knows already, like I'm gonna have to do some things maybe a little differently, but he's open to it, he's aware of it, and he's so skilled and he's been so successful. Players that are like as successful as he has been, that's kind of wired into you, I think, right? And when it's wired into you, it's like you've already made changes, and you've already adjusted, and you're good at it, and that's what's really encouraging about Shota.
Yesterday, when we were at the desk, you talked about watching Dansby Swanson more closely because it was your first time we're in the same division and getting a chance to see him and appreciate him. What's it been like talking to him and getting some perspective on his personality?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's cool about Dansby is that there's a confidence to him that's not arrogance, but it's just real, right? And for what everything he has carried is like, he was the number one pick in the draft. That's a big weight to carry as a player. No matter how talented you are, it's a huge weight to carry. And he really carries it all with like the appropriate amount of confidence, but then this coolness to him and lightness to him that's makes him like fun to be around as a player. And then, there's this competitiveness to him and this like everydayness to him that we just love as a teammate, right? He's gonna show up every single day and be there. And for our leaders and for our rocks, like that's really important. And that's a great, that's, you talk about culture, like that's a piece of culture, like that's one of your leaders and that's the example he sets.
All right, we're going to start with some questions.